rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Now, have we ever seen a Star Wars action figure or toy in the whole 40 years that had a color-changing gimmick? I don't recall this. I feel like this is brand new. Like, do you remember the winter gloves or the mittens that they used to sell back in like the late 70s and early 80s? And you would go out in the cold, and then like a different design or something would appear on them. They were kind of silver. And we used to just put them in the freezer, so we could play with them all year long. But then toys came along that offered some sort of color changer, and you could like dip them in cold water, dip them in warm water, and the color would change. I think this is brand new to Star Wars, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second, because if anyone will remember, it is the guy I'm going to introduce in just a moment. But we wanted to say welcome officially here, Rebel Force Radio, this week's show for Friday, February. Why do I always? This is the second time, like in a month, that I've done February. Friday, September 7th, 2018. Great to be back here in the co-host chair, Rebel Force Radio. My apologies for not being here last week, though, based on the feedback we've been getting. Many of you would prefer Paul Bateman to myself, but too bad. Too bad. I'm back, baby, and we got a great show for you. I hope this guy's not sad to hear me back. My good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. No, very happy to have you back. It's just totally not the same without you here. But we did have a good time last week with Paul Bateman on the show, and my friend Lisa stopped in. She's seen Solo 20 times in the theater. So
wow. So she pretty much kept that movie afloat then.
Yeah, I think she took it upon herself when she was reading stories and like in Variety about disappointing box office and everything. I thought she was like going to single-handedly turn that around.
I'm going to fix this.
It's a lot to ask of one person, but you know what? I think she did put at least a dent into those numbers. So, but it was great. It was great, but it was odd and different not having you around, and I'm glad you're back this week. You said you were going to introduce someone who would remember information about Star Wars action figures, so I'm eagerly awaiting his introduction.
No, what do you think? I got Dan Curto waiting in the wings here? No. No, I thought that you might remember this. I saw a piece over on IO9 about the forthcoming action figure for the bad guy from Quinlan Vos. No, not Quinlan.
Quinlan Vos. You mean Dryden Vos from Solo?
Vos,
okay.
Vos. You see how easy it is? Well, Vos is like it's like Jones in the Star Wars universe. Dryden Vos, the main baddie from Solo, he's getting the 6-inch Black Series treatment, and this figure looks pretty cool. But IO9 makes the point that, well, how are you going to make kind of like this normal, kind of somewhat handsome looking dude in a black space tuxedo interesting? And they're like, color changing face scars. So if he's in cold water, those scars that he had on his face,
right?
Those lines, I never even really looked at him as scars. I always thought it was just sort of like he was that was part of his race, right? His species, that he wasn't human.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I thought he was, granted, that's a little Star Trek-y.
Yeah.
Right? Just to have a subtle difference there.
Right.
But that's the way I took him. I wasn't thinking those as scars. But anyway.
Right. That was just a feature of his species. I didn't think they were scars either.
Apparently they're scars.
There's a lot of scars. So why would his scars then glow when he gets ticked off?
Were they glowing when he was mad?
It seemed like it, that they would intensify. Didn't you see that in the film? That when he was torturing that one guy, he got really mad, and his scars would start to intensify in color. It almost seemed like they were glowing to me.
Well, they call them in this article on IO9, they call them scar-like markings. So, the scar-like, maybe they're not scars. I'd have to consult the Solo official Solo guidebook.
Yeah.
Which I have. It's just out of reach. I can't reach it. Oh, but maybe you got it handy there in the studio.
Mine is too. This is awful. Oh, now I'm unplugged.
Oh, yeah.
But
some professional you are.
Hold on, I have to plug back in.
But you'll know what temperature it is in your Star Wars room based on how visible.
Okay, I have it. I have the official.
So here's the thing, Jim. It's an action figure / thermometer, because you will know the temperature of the Star Wars room depending on how visible the scars are on the Paul Bettany action figure.
That's pretty cool. And I think, though, there has been technology where you would see, I don't think it was temperature controlled, but didn't they put out variants of the battle droid back in the episode 1 days where you would put water on it and it would expose some sort of battle damage on the action figure? And
that's a good question.
There were 4 variants. And I think...
Now, I remember there being variant battle droids with varying degrees of, different colors, as well as varying degrees of battle damage, because, my gosh, they made so many of them. And then if you remember, Jim, I think they were the European versions. They came in 2-packs, where all the primary, characters came with a battle droid. Some of those, I think, even got released in the States, but they had so many battle droids. It's like buy one, get one free. They were sold in 2-packs. But something else that makes this article just jump out at me, and it was just like wow, I'm old. Get this. Now the writer of this is who is this? This is James Whitbrook over at IO9, and he says, when I was a young kid in the 90s, and Hasbro's Power of the Force line of Star Wars toys was fueling my early adoration of both the galaxy far, far away and action figures in general, I adored the extra little action features like this. The Jawas, whose eyes would light up through a see-through panel in their heads to let natural light in. The R2-D2 with the spring-loaded pop-up scanner. Or even the pre-posed Obi-Wan and Darth Vader that had light-up lightsabers. It just struck me all of a sudden like that those early 90s Power of the Force 2, we call them, because the last line that Kenner did prior to the great blackout, the Dark Times, was also called Power of the Force. It was the line after Return of the Jedi. So this became Power of the Force 2. They were first on orange cards with a Darth Vader illustration. But to think that is nostalgic and vintage.
Mm-hmm. Well, it
to
is.
People now, it's wild. It was just wild, like, whoa.
Well, think about it. You're going back 20+ years.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's a whole generation of fans who look back on that line as their vintage. And,
so ours are antique.
Oh yeah,
they've got to be
made out of wood, hand carved and painted. If I have a land speeder, it's all tin, and you wind it up.
Doesn't Steve Sansweet have a big collection of tin robots?
Yes. Or at least he's been known to have a huge collection. I don't know. That was what he primarily was into collecting previous to Star Wars. And so I don't know if Star Wars then, that obsession then wiped out the toy line. I never see those toy robots around Rancho Obi-Wan. I have seen a couple of them, random.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking that you go over and there's a secret panel and you just press a button and a door opens and they're all in glass case. I'd like to think that.
That would be cool, but I don't think it's I don't think that's true.
Like in Scooby-Doo, the off-colored brick in the wall, it's like there's one brick that's just slightly different.
Yes.
A clue. Anyway, so you're saying that there may have been a color change feature with the battle droids back in the Ep1 days.
Yes. I cannot confirm that right now, though.
Okay.
But
what about your research on the scars? Did they mention that in the official visual guide?
Just on flipping through it, there are a couple pages dedicated to Dryden, but I don't see any mention of the scars. So either it just didn't end up in the book to keep that a secret, which is unlikely because it had no real impact on the film. And like I said, I think a lot of people may have missed that little detail.
Yeah.
But the other thing is maybe it just is something that was added late in production, because remember the Paul Bettany character was originally supposed to be a CGI alien character. And so there was a lot of evolution.
That's right, yeah.
And all of his scenes had to be reshot with a different with Paul.
Yeah.
And so maybe that was something that was added really late in the game after this book, Solo, the official guide, went to the printer, because I don't see anything about it. Does mention there's a little scar up on top of his forehead by his hairline, and it says a head wound is evidence of recent trauma. The incision has been mechno-stapled by Dryden's on-staff physician. I never noticed he had a scar up on top of his forehead.
Well, I know it sounds like a wound. A recent wound.
This is a head wound. Yes.
A head wound. I had a taxi driver once with a head wound. As a matter of fact, it was Indianapolis Celebration 3. I was taking a taxi from the hotel. I was a total convention noob, and I stayed a little too far, so I had to take this taxi from the convention to the conventions, or from my hotel to the convention center. And one time I got real lucky, and I'm sitting there in the back of the taxi, and it was a little weirded out because there was about 1.5 inches of water in the back, like where your feet go, because it's all plastic in there.
Right.
And then I thought that was weird, and I looked up, and this guy had a gaping wound in the back of his head.
God.
And I thought, wow, this guy's seen some hard times. I just get me out of here quick, please. Anyway, we got a great show for you. Mark Hamill, he took to Twitter to offer folks a little Labor Day tweet, and that may offer a clue as to what he's up to these days. Plus, a rather extensive look at a review of the Solo film novelization that's going to be hitting shelves here in the next couple of days. And it really does sort of just blast the story wide open. So thought we'd run through a few of the things that you might learn. It is I got to say, there is a bit of a spoiler if you're sensitive.
Spoiler alert.
So that is coming up. Yeah. So, the spoiler of some of those new revelations that you will find when you read the novel. Plus, Rian Johnson, he claims that his trilogy is still in the works. We'll talk about that. And Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, this is very exciting. Composer announcements, which is great. And finally, Billy D returns to Rebel Force Radio with a brand new quote of the week, although we might have to rename it the Grunt of the Week. It's more.
It's more than he's given us in the last few years, so we'll take it.
The Billy D gasp of the week. But there was Jim, you and Paul did such a great job last week, and certainly talking about the featurette that gave us a little bit better and more in-depth look at the characters coming to us in Star Wars Resistance, the animated series that is debuting next month on Disney XD. There were just a couple of things that jumped out at me, and maybe you guys covered this. So stop me if you did. But I'm sure most people noticed that Dave was without the hat.
Yes, right.
Dave was without the hat.
Now, is there significance to that? I was wondering that myself. What's the significance of hatless Filoni?
Well, I want to throw it out there because not just sans hat. We had very wavy, slick back hair. We had a graying beard and a flannel shirt. So I'm just throwing it out.
I see where you're going here.
A plus B plus C equals GL. That's all I'm saying. A plus B plus equals G. Am I the only one that noticed this? I mean, how warm does it possibly, or how cold does it get out there? They're wearing the flannel. I mean, George always looked out of place, or not always, sometimes, often looked out of place with the flannel because it's a seasonal seasonal thing. You know, I'm sure George sits around the pool. He sits around Coppola's pool with the flannel on. You know he does. He probably has.
He's a pool guy. I don't see George Lucas kicking back poolside.
Someone has got a photo of George. Someone, and I'm guessing it's from the 80s. It's George and Spielberg sitting around a pool somewhere, and George has got full tennis shoes, full blue jeans, and flannel, and then Spielberg's probably sitting there in like a Speedo with Kate Capshaw wrapped around his neck. That's someone's got this photo. It exists. It has to.
There is that legendary story of Spielberg and Lucas taking a vacation after Star Wars was released, and they went to Hawaii. And while sitting on the beach building sandcastles, they started to piece together the story of Indiana Jones. This is a legendary story.
That's right.
So Spielberg is in like shorts and his baseball hat, his like yellow baseball hat, and maybe a sans shirt.
Yeah, I think he's shirtless with big aviator shades on.
And George is next to him, on his knees, with a little bucket and shovel, building a sandcastle. But he's got gym shoes, jeans, and a flannel on. And his hair looks perfect.
Oh, of course.
And so that's the image right there.
He's like the werewolf in Werewolves of London. And his hair was perfect. Always.
So if you ever heard that story, now there's your mental image to go along with it.
I want a poolside pic of George, so please show it rebelforceradio.com. If anybody's got it, it's Paul. And Paul has been pulling out he's just got every book imaginable. And I don't know if you follow him on Facebook, he just pulls out these gems, these photos. Somebody just puts them up sometimes without comment. These amazing little time capsule photos that are, buried in all different kinds of reference material that he has. So maybe Paul has a poolside George.
Poolside George. Here's a picture of George in shorts.
No.
Family outing. George. Okay, let's open up. This is the dailymail.co.uk. And this is from a couple of years ago. But there's a shot of George hand in hand with wife Melody Hobson on a shopping trip in St. Bart's. Mm-hmm. And there's George. Flannel, yes, with long sleeves, but he is wearing shorts and little white socks that go up halfway his calf. And
really?
his trademark sneakers, I think George would refer to him as. Melody, have you seen my sneakers? Yeah, I try not to do the Dan Aykroyd. There's a Dan Aykroyd laugh that's very.
Yeah, it was the Late Show guy, Tom Snyder. He would do Tom Snyder and do the
when he'd be imitating Tom Snyder. But just killing time here while I send you the link to this picture of George. I'm sending it to your personal email account now. So you can treasure it for years to come. But that is the most chillaxed I see George in just a simple Google search of George Lucas swimming pool images. Just one shot of him there in the shorts.
Wait, I see. Now I'm remembering something. Wasn't there a totally bizarre, out of nowhere photo of George vacationing, and he was wearing shorts? Because I remember we talked about it then, and Paul McCartney was there too. I know this sounds like a fever dream, but but it was George and Paul McCartney.
All right, well,
maybe
back
you can
to
find this.
Our friend the Google. George was always considered to be the fifth Beatle.
All right.
Oh, here. Okay, yes. Okay, here's Sir Paul with George, and George is wearing shorts. Trademark flannel, blue checker shirt with blue shorts that just come right above his kneecap. And he's with Paul McCartney. It says they're celebrating New Year's Eve together. So maybe they're a hot new couple. But
Hollywood's latest.
This is the latest thing. This is just from last December. So they rang in 2018. the Beatles singer and the Star Wars creator were spotted having lunch together in St. Bart's. That's where George goes to let it all hang out, is St. Bart's.
That's it. Okay.
So if you want to see casual Lucas, plan your family trip to St. Bart's, and you'll at least see George in Bermuda shorts.
Yeah, but still flannel.
Still with the flannel. Here he is getting on a boat with Stella McCartney and Paul McCartney. Yeah. So, you know what? Retirement's treating George Lucas pretty well if he's hanging out with an ex-Beatle.
Yeah, I mean, if you retire with $4 billion, you're probably going to find yourself somewhere at some point on a boat with Paul McCartney.
I got $4 billion now. McCartney will take my calls.
Okay, the other thing that jumped out at me, and once again, correct me if I'm wrong. So we did clear that Filoni is clearly channeling George Lucas. Okay, with the no cowboy hat, the slick back, very thick head of hair, the graying beard.
That's
and
what you're seeing. That's what you're seeing.
That's what I'm seeing.
So what I know about Dave, and I've spent time on convention floors with him, when he doesn't want to be recognized, he takes the hat off. So, I'm like, oh no, maybe Dave doesn't want to be necessarily recognized as someone who's working on Star Wars. No.
He doesn't want to be associated. They'll never know. They'll never know.
Here, I was talking to Dave once, and he said, the cowboy hat is just really something that has become sort of a professional trademark of his.
Yeah.
And he keeps it in his office and throws it on when he's meeting people or there's a video camera there or something. He originally started wearing the hat because he was working at Skywalker Ranch and Big Rock Ranch. And there's a way you can walk, from one ranch to the other. You have to climb up this big hill. I don't know if that's the way, but he would definitely take hikes on this huge property. And he wore the hat just to sort of, he's out on a ranch and the sun is shining and he's he's got that, pasty Pennsylvania skin that he needs protected at all times. So
I relate. I have the same. Well, I'm slightly west with my pasty Northeast Ohio skin, but I know what it's like.
Well, I have you guys beat with pasty Illinois Irish skin, so I don't stand a chance. But so that's why Dave started wearing the hat, and it just kind of became this thing, this trademark of his. But he doesn't wear the hat, when he's going about his life, his day-to-day routine.
Yeah, but all those years of the Clone Wars, the Clone Wars conversations and various appearances that he has made as, Dave Filoni, Star Wars animation head, he always had the hat on.
He always, yes, but like I said, that's a professional trademark. Yeah. Dave Filoni, U.S. resident, does not walk around wearing the hat all the time. When he even said that a neighbor of his came up to him because he doesn't promote the fact that he works on Star Wars to even his neighbors or anything. But he said that a neighbor came to him once and said, my daughter said she saw you on TV. And he was like, oh, really? And she goes, yeah. And she says, you were wearing a cowboy hat. And she thought that was just so strange because she only knew him as the neighbor. And like I said, he doesn't go out to get his Sunday paper with the cowboy hat on. It's just something he wears that's just become sort of a professional trademark. So I always thought that was pretty funny.
That is. I'm sure he's got the flannel robe, though.
There he is. And he's got a cowboy hat on, Mom. He's wearing a cowboy hat.
The other thing that I noticed is they show Brandon Auman, who is billed as the executive producer and head writer.
Yes.
That stuck out at me because I don't recall Clone Wars ever... Well, I take it back. Henry Gilroy was the head writer on Clone Wars initially.
Yes.
And then Gilroy left, and then it was just like the writer of the week.
No, Christian Taylor did actually take on that mantle as head writer.
As head writer, was he really?
For a few seasons he did, yes.
I was about to say that I don't recall there being, after Gilroy, a head writer on a Star Wars animation project.
It was Christian after him. But I don't know if that was anything that was really something that, it was promoted like in the credits at the end of the show, but he was the head writer of that series for a few seasons.
I mean, this makes me feel good. I don't disagree with the idea. Look, Pixar famously mastered the art of collaborative filmmaking and collaborative storytelling in terms of breaking stories and going through these brutal but very, very helpful sessions where you weren't able to get a story passed on up to production until it passed the muster of all your colleagues. But they beat up those stories and helped them overcome all the little hurdles and obstacles, and that's why 9 out of 10 Pixar films are great. Mm-hmm. So I'm not opposed to this idea, but I do think that there has to be a leader in anything, in any endeavor. There has to be some form of hierarchy, and the buck has to stop with someone. And so I really appreciate. Sorry about that. So I really appreciate the fact that we're seeing a credited head writer. And perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps I just wasn't watching the credits closely enough. But I don't recall that with Rebels, and I don't recall it in the later years of Clone Wars.
Yeah, I can't really attest to who had that title or if that title was even in play when it wasn't Henry or wasn't Christian. But all in all, I think it is a good idea to have someone there, sort of supervising at least a season at a time, and because we're looking for that consistency and some sort of thread to keep it all together. And even if that comes down to personnel, one person is able to keep track of that more than just a revolving door of different writers coming in each and every week.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the role, one of the critical roles that George Lucas played in the first 40 years of Star Wars, was the guy that kept it all straight. Now, some would argue that he didn't and would occasionally contradict himself and all of that, but it was still coming out of one guy. And I look at the complaints and the problems that have emerged throughout the sequel trilogy, and what we're missing, and I think very few people would argue, is a larger story that's being constructed behind the scenes. And it's just this whole notion of pass the baton. Okay, now you finish the story, or you continue the story, or whatever. And so I like that idea of continuity. And even though you have maybe a shifting crew underneath you, you have some consistency at the top. But anyway, the rest of it, I was great seeing some of the behind the scenes stuff, the voice actors. What's interesting to me also is it seems like they are actually doing their voiceovers with the video reference. So perhaps these episodes are being, unlike Clone Wars, where they would actually animate to the voice. It seems like they are voicing to the animation here with Star Wars Resistance. So that might account for the smaller budget, the quicker, easier animation style, technology, what have you. Which to me I think can be a really good thing, because I think that they can switch things up. They can show the characters wearing different costumes, have a little bit more variety in the way the show looks, instead of having to develop models over the course of many years. So I think that is a plus in my book. I think it'll propel and hopefully speed the storytelling along.
Can I just say, we were talking about, if we want to talk about technical things. And where do you get that from anyway, that they're voicing to the animation as opposed to the other way around?
I'll tell you, there is a shot of, and I think it is the young man who plays Ziono. I can't think of his name offhand. But anyway, there's a shot of him in the recording studio, and he is recording to a screen that is showing the episode.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, that could be like, some sort of previs or whatever, or something.
Looks pretty final to me.
Well, okay, so that's hey, that's a good assumption to make, just judging from the evidence we've seen so far. So
it says property. I'm just saying real quick, Jim. There's a watermark on the video that he's watching. This says property of Lucasfilm Limited / review copy for LA Studios. So they've got the time code on there. So he's clearly reacting and voicing to the animation.
Oh, that's interesting. If anyone can confirm or deny that, give us an email, show@rebelforceradio.com, because you did write us. A lot of you wrote us when we were talking about the animation process that's being used for Resistance, and we said that it was 2D. Well, a lot of people are letting us know that it is, in fact, 3D CG animation using a process called cell shading, which uses texture and lighting to give 3D models a flat appearance. That info came from Justin from Pasadena. We heard from a lot of other people, too, who also filled us in on that info, saying that, yeah, it's definitely a CG animated program.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. I never doubted that it was being made on a computer. I wasn't disputing that. And it's because why would you animate on traditional cell animation at this point? Disney tried doing it. What was the last movie they tried to do it with? Oh, it was the great flick. Took place in New Orleans. The Frog, Princess and the Frog.
Princess
right? That was
and the Frog.
Yeah, that was the last traditional.
Yeah.
And
when did that come out?
That was back in the mid 2000s, maybe. Mm-hmm. Great movie. But I think that was the last time they did traditional and Disney animation with painted cells and all of that. Now some of the backgrounds I know were done with computers. So when I was talking about it being 2D, I mean, look, I never claimed to be any kind of expert in animation. I'm just describing what my eye is seeing. What my eye is seeing is a two-dimensional view,
right,
of characters, right. But as far as the way it's made, yeah, it makes total sense that they would do it on a computer.
Of course. Well, of course. I don't think anyone was saying they're not doing it on a computer. But.
Right. All right, I'm sending you this photo here, animating, or I'm going to say voice over to animation, and you can take a look at that. That's really all that that jumped out at me in watching this. It's certainly, it didn't make me say, oh, well, my first impressions of the trailer were unfounded. I'm certainly going to give it a shot. I think that it's something, even if they say several times in the featurette, this is being made for a younger audience, my two thoughts on that. One, they said the same thing about Clone Wars, and we know where that ended. And two, great. Good. I mean, great. I have no issues at all with Star Wars, overtly making product, with a younger audience in mind. I don't. That doesn't bother me at all. I've got two young kids. I think it's great to have something to offer them. But I think they need to be very, very upfront about it and not position it as, the heir apparent to the Clone Wars Rebels sort of title, the reign. When you think about the way the Batman animated series went into the Superman animated series, went into the Superman Batman hour, which went into the New Adventures of Batman, which went into Justice League, which then went into Justice League Unlimited. That is one big, sort of canonical story of those DC characters, and kept very similar, creative teams, and of very, very unique and specific look to it and all of that. I think it would be dishonest if they would even try to put this show up there with Clone Wars and Rebels. And maybe they aren't. In fact, this featurette doesn't really make a whole lot of reference to either of the series that came before it, whereas you did see some connection being made between Clone Wars and Rebels when Rebels was being pre-promoted. So
now, of course, the proximity on the timeline between the two series makes it easier. And the fact that this is happening decades, multiple times, maybe 3 decades after the events of Return of the Jedi. Is that right? When does the Force Awakens fall on the timeline? Do we have...
Force Awakens? Yeah. Force Awakens is 30.
That is 30.
30 years.
So this is happening shortly before the events of that film. Mm-hmm. So that's a considerable stretch of time to be able to connect Rebels then to this. You're talking 3.5 decades. It's hard to make that connection, I think.
Well, I don't mean connecting it story-wise. I mean connecting it in terms of how do I say this? Packaging, PR. That you've got these flagship Lucasfilm animation projects, Clone Wars, Rebels, and now Resistance. I don't think Resistance is in the same league as these other two series.
Yeah, right.
So I think this is sort of like a fracture point where Star Wars animation is going to spin off into multiple, perhaps multiple series.
That could
if
be.
That makes sense. You know what I mean?
That could be. Hey, one last thing about this freeze frame you sent me about the actor voicing to the animation, as opposed to the other way around, which is traditionally how they would do it in the Clone Wars and Rebels. They would have the actors do their performance, and then they would build animation off of that, essentially, and the script, of course. But here we see an actor reacting to something that's clearly fully animated. Could he just be doing the grunts and things like that?
Pickup stuff, or ADR. Yeah. I don't know. They probably don't call it ADR in animation.
Yeah, right.
Maybe they do. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's possible. Definitely possible.
Because it looks like it's a physical scene that's happening on the screen where Niku and BB-8 are getting thrown into a hallway. So maybe he's just going, ugh, Yeah,
it's definitely possible. I remember, watching various shows about animation over the years in the 70s and 80s, and typically it was always done where they would where they would voice to the animation. The animation was happening very quickly, and especially for some of these weekly animated series. That's always been my take. Mm-hmm. But for the stuff, some stuff they preferred to lay down the tracks and then go back and animate to it. Disney did that a lot. I know Pixar has done that a lot, where they would actually put, I think maybe Clone Wars did it too, where they would actually put cameras on the actors' faces, mm-hmm. and then sometimes use that as reference.
That's
footage.
Right. Yeah.
When they were doing the animation. So I don't know. Every time I start saying something like this, people go, "No, that's clearly not the way it is. I've worked in animation for years." So that's why we have the greatest audience in all of podcasting, because you guys will correct us if we're wrong. But at least we're starting the conversation. Now, before we leave the topic of, hey, Parker, come on down.
Oh, this is a big moment here.
This is, before we leave the topic of Star Wars animation completely, I've got, in case Dave Filoni or Matt Wood or any of those guys are listening, I have a last-minute auditionee for a role, should they ever bring back General Grievous. Mm-hmm. As you know, my 5-year-old, soon to be 6 years old here in about a week, he has been working on his Star Wars impressions over the last few months, and he had a little accident, a happy accident in the bathtub, where he discovered how he could improve his already, of course, flawless General Grievous impression. Come on down. Come on. So, like most kids, he bathes with a snorkel and goggles.
Yeah, right. Okay.
We have a very big bathtub. All right.
Okay. Yeah, he's got an Olympic pool that they bathe in.
Right, like Francis in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Remember that?
Yeah.
Francis is busy. All right, come here, buddy. Okay, so he happened to be... Come over here, Park.
Is he like dripping wet? Hi, Parker. Is he dripping wet all over the studio floor right now? I mean, is he just soaked?
No, he's not actually out of the bath.
Oh, I see.
He's He does have the snorkel.
Okay.
But we're going to see if we can capture this. This just happened by accident, where he had the snorkel. And Park, okay, can you do General Grievous's cough with your snorkel here? Okay, come on. But you got to get close to the microphone, though. Okay, no, come over here.
Can I have one more time?
Can you have what?
A minute to practice. One more.
You want to? We're on the air now.
He's professional.
What are you, Billy Mack? You got to do the warm up.
He's got to do the warm up, of course.
All right. Do the General Grievous warm up here for us. Come on. You can't. Can't choke. Come on. You do it. Oh, do you hear that cough?
That was pretty good.
Here, let's see.
Ooh,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Very good. Very nice.
Now, do we have some dialogue, maybe?
What's dialogue?
Oh, dialogue would be a line. We rehearsed this, folks. Dialogue would be a line from the movie. Yeah.
That's what it seems.
Okay, all right. Let's get some coughing going on. All right, let's do some coughing.
Well, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we got that down. Let's get a line. Come on.
Well, Jesus, that sounds like a carton of Marlboros there.
I think my old granny sounded like that before she kicked off. All right. Okay. Can we get another Kenobi?
Kenobi.
Well, no, through the thing. Come on, give us one last one. Give us a good one. There we go. All right. Very good. Keep working on it. Keep working on it. Let's get. Yeah. I love the coughs.
Yeah, and I just want to say, if you're out there in the listening audience and you are a pediatrician, please contact us immediately. Show at rebelforceradio.com. That cough sounded a little too. I'm not a doctor, but
next time, you know how you always sound. You sound better singing in the shower.
Yes.
Right, the acoustics. Mm-hmm. There was something about the acoustics of the bathtub, and I realized it doesn't quite have the same. I swear to God, when he was doing it in the bathtub, I came running into the bathroom. I'm like, are you watching Clone Wars or something? Because it sounded just like it, the way it was echoing off the bathroom walls. And I realized, well, Matt Wood must have had like a $2 Kmart.
He had the snorkel in there.
Snorkel,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I bet they have all kind of crazy stuff in those studios. So, yeah, I bet he's got that snorkel. And for, those late days in the office when he needs to go out to Lake Ewok and take a dip, he's probably got a snorkel in there for, and then he just realized, hey, maybe if we mic this snorkel, it works. Because the cough did have that effect. It did sound just like a General Grievous cough. As a matter of fact, I think later in the show we'll do a comparison between Parker's cough and the real deal.
The real one?
And I bet you'll find that it's indistinguishable. You'll be able to.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. All right, let's take our dip into the voicemail bag here. This is, I believe, Tanner from Denver.
Hey guys, it's Tanner calling from Denver, Colorado here. Just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of the show. It's definitely set the bar for all other podcasts for me. I've been listening for about a year now, recently joined the Patreon community, and absolutely love all the bonus content and everything like that. So thank you guys so much for all that. The reason why I'm calling is something that I think would be kind of cool. Like, this is just a little speculation and everything, but yesterday, it is Thursday, August 30th when I'm calling here. But yesterday I saw an announcement that Matt Smith is joining the cast of episode 9, and the announcement said that he is playing a key role. And so that kind of stuck out to me because he's a big name actor. He's the 11th Doctor and everything, and that they're bringing a big, well-known actor to play.
Calling from his TARDIS.
Yeah, I think he is. Well, thanks, Tanner. We appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words about Patreon, and you too can be a Patreon subscriber of us here at Rebel Force Radio, go to patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. We'll have more information about that later.
Speaking of Matt Smith, a Doctor Who character, a Doctor Who actor, I should say, joining Star Wars.
He's the Doctor Who.
Right. We were trying to figure out what other Doctor Who actors had ended up in Star Wars over the years. And, of course, Tom Baker, he was the voice of the Bendu.
Right.
On Star Wars Rebels. Paul said someone else last week. I can't remember who it was. Oh, David Tennant, of course, did the voice of the ancient Jedi archive droid that was in the Younglings episodes.
Yep.
But somebody recently reminded me, and maybe I can find it real quick, that there's another pretty well-known Star Wars actor who did play Doctor Who at one point. This comes from Robbie Harold from Perth, Australia, who says, "Good day, Jimmy and Paul and Jason." I added that on there.
Oh, thanks.
But he's responding to last week's show.
I missed one show, and it's now.
You already forgot.
Hey,
they
Jimmy and Paul.
They totally forgot you in Australia already.
Well, they are upside down there,
He says there actually been 5 Doctor Who's in Star Wars.
Wow.
5. Leslie Schofield, who played Chief Bast in the original, he was one of the officers on the Death Star who had just spectacular sideburns. I know that doesn't really narrow down the field very much because they all had spectacular sideburns back in the 70s. But Julian Glover, General Veers. Oh, he played 2 characters in Doctor Who. Okay, wait. These are Doctor Who cast members who played
not
bit roles.
necessarily doctors,
yes,
right?
Yeah. Darn it.
Okay.
But here's the big one that Robbie says. The big one, a guy who did play Doctor Who was Peter Cushing himself. General Tarkin played Doctor Who.
Oh my gosh, that's right. He did.
Governor Tarkin, I should say, not General.
Yeah.
I would be sent to the spice mines of Kessel if he heard me saying that.
Oh my gosh. So see, Matt Smith, he's not so special.
And then we've all seen.
You're not going to get better than Grand Moff Tarkin, Matt Smith or no. And this whole idea about playing a key role, this means nothing in Star Wars PR. Have we learned nothing about key roles, Max von Sydow? Have we learned nothing?
Well, that was a key role. It wasn't a very big role, but it was key because he had the key that he gave to or the map.
It was. I think it was on a little key ring too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
like that's what his Prius turns on with that. There on.
He was in a hurry because the stormtroopers were coming, and so he jammed the key ring into his pocket so fast that he hit that little red button on the back, and so his car started beeping. His X-wing.
That's how they found him. No!
That's how they found him. Because his X-wing is off over on the other side of that dune there, beeping. Yeah, the lights are flashing. I'll tell you something about those things. I used to hit that button all the time. I had this Toyota, and it had that little red button on the back of the key ring.
Mm-hmm. Panic button.
I used to hit that thing accidentally all the time. I mean, people would get really mad at me after a while that it kept happening. So I went to the Toyota dealer, and I said, is there anything you can do to disable this thing? I mean, like, people are ready to kill me. They're like, nothing we could do. Nothing we could do. So I went to the hardware store and picked up a tube of super glue and just dumped the whole tube right into the button, and that took care of it. So if you're ever
so what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do if you really need it? If you're being robbed, you gotta hit that panic button.
If there is a panic, I will throw the key ring at my assailant and run.
That's it probably weighs an extra 10 pounds with all the super glue you dumped in it. It's now a weapon.
One other Doctor Who connection to Star Wars. I don't know if you've ever seen these pictures online, but there are pictures of a couple of astronauts from an episode of Doctor Who wearing the exact same spacer suit that Bosk wears in Empire Strikes Back. And Bo Sheck also wears a very similar sort of suit.
That rings a distant bell, actually. Right. I think I knew that at one time, but forgot that I knew it.
Right, so now you know it again.
Now I know it again.
Until you forget it.
Hey there, this is Ashley Eckstein, voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you are listening to Rebel Force Radio. This is your source for the Force.
Hey guys, it's Brian from Cary, North Carolina. So this weekend, I was fortunate, got to spend some time with my brother in the Pacific Northwest. And of course, we're having some local libations and we're talking the wars, right? Because that's what we do. My brother Ralph. He sent you guys an email a little while ago about the Solo movie and was so pumped that you guys read it. So listen, here's what we're talking about. We're talking about all the things that could happen in episode 9, right? We're speculating. This is all speculation, no leak. And he says, what about this? Remember the line when Kylo says, or not Kylo, when Huck says, my troopers have been programmed since birth. So there's some defect in Finn, right? Where he flips. You know, he's unable to kill for them on the battlefield. But what if the big twist is that Finn at some point, that reprogramming kicks back in and he turns on our beloved crew? Think about that. Would that blow your mind if in 9?
It is, yeah.
Maybe even in 10, 11, Finn flips. Anyways, guys, love the show. Keep up the great work, and may the Force be with you.
I can just see the action figure now. Flippin' Finn. That's the action feature.
I could just see the guys sitting around in Cary, North Carolina, and they got all these empties at the bottom of their feet while they're sitting around maybe a bonfire or, you know, just a fire pit outside, and he drops down that one. What if Finn's programming kicks back in and he betrays everyone? No way! And they just all, you know, they start throwing empties up in the air and stuff.
Shooting them. Throwing in the air and blowing them away. You know, it's funny. I love watching these voicemails with the Google Translate because he said, yeah, of course, we're having some local libations and we're sitting around talking divorce. I thought, well, that's an uplifting one.
Divorce?
He meant the wars. I mean, well, he says the wars, but yes, yeah. It said divorce.
In some households, if you talk the wars too much, that might lead you to divorce.
I think it's a great idea. You know, it's one of those that, oh boy, they'd really have to kind of perhaps clue you off maybe at the top of the film to remind you of that, because that line goes by so quickly. It was not built upon at all, like most things from Force Awakens in The Last Jedi. But I remember hearing that line. I remember thinking, this is interesting. So we're talking about, you know, individuals, not clones here, but still there's a degree of programming. So, yeah, that would be a great twist. You know, beloved Finn betraying, you know, it'd be wild. It'd be wild. It would be cool. It would be cool, but I don't think it's going to happen if they haven't, you know, brought that up since then. There was something online recently bringing up the. Do you remember, Jim, in episode 1 where Anakin is talking about having the little chip inside of him that would, as a slave, so he'd blow you up, boom.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
And there was somebody going on, and they were speculating about how, you know, Vader could have blown up at any time.
Well, something I always thought of, especially during the prequel era, having that little bit of knowledge, knowing that there was this little thing that could detonate inside Anakin Skywalker if it was to be turned back on, that could be something used by Watto or an enemy of Anakin's. And I thought maybe that would initiate part of the rise of Darth Vader, more machine than man, twisted and evil. I thought maybe someone got a hold of that detonator from Watto, or Watto himself pressed the button. I wonder if the batteries are still good in this thing.
It's a 9-volt. Let me lick the top. Yes, it's still good. Well, you know what I thought he was going to have to do? I thought he was going to have to cut off his own arm. To get rid of that.
Oh.
And that's
crazy.
How Vader was going to lose his arm.
Well, I think what happened was, as a part of Watto transferring ownership of Anakin over to Qui-Gon, who then is, just let Anakin go free. Well, to a degree, I mean, Anakin kind of moved from one life of slavery into another one, if you really want to look at it in that way, because he never had any freedom when he was living at the Jedi Temple, it seems like, But,
well, yeah, this is someone who, unlike a Jedi who was taken from a very, very young age and trained and didn't know a life any different, and certainly wasn't sitting there at night looking up at the stars wishing for a different existence. This kid's whole, growing up was looking for freedom and doing what he wanted to do finally for the first time and being independent. And so, Jim, that's a really great point. He went from one type of servitude to another, and no wonder he lost himself. Right. I mean, that wasn't what he signed up for in his mind. That is what he signed up for, but he didn't know that. He thought it was going to offer him a world of opportunity, and in some ways, perhaps like the college guy learning to play the guitar to impress the girls. He thought, what better way to lure Padme and have the love of my life than by being this incredible hero? And I think that was in the back of his mind. I mean, when you see him in episode 2, it's like, okay, he's been waiting 10 years for this. This is his moment. This is his moment. He hasn't forgotten her, and he's going to make a big impression.
Yeah, it'd be easier just to buy a guitar.
Yeah, it really would have been. Than all that problems they went through in episode 2. But anyway, by the way, thank you all very much for the voicemails. We appreciate those.
Yes,
please.
Thank you, Brian. I'll tell you what. I want to hang out with Brian and his brother and down a few of those local libations myself and talk divorce. And talk Star Wars. I would really.
Yes, thanks, man. 708-320-1737 if you want to leave us a voicemail.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Well, I don't know how much this counts as news, because we know that Mark Hamill is going to be in Star Wars Episode 9, but just a couple days ago, we celebrated Labor Day here in the United States, and Mark Hamill tweeted a photo of himself, still beardless, along with this: "I've always loved the irony of America celebrating #Labor Day by not working." Speaking of irony, I'm posting this a day early because at the moment I'm not in the good old USA. And tomorrow, wait for it, I have to go to work.
Oh, no.
Mark Hamill starting his new job, whatever it may be, on Labor Day. Can you imagine? So he #enjoy your barbecues, barbecuties, and had that picture and, heart MH as he always signs off on his tweets. So I guess we should assume that he's off in the UK doing his part for Star Wars Episode 9 to be announced.
Wasn't it also just recently announced that Mark is going to be participating in a role in a television series?
I don't know. I didn't see that. I didn't hear that, really.
Yeah, there's some TV news with Mark Hamill. I believe the show is called Nightfall. And Mark is going to have a recurring role on Nightfall. That's not a show I watch. I believe it is one of those sort of medieval things. It's, knight in shining armor kind of.
Knight like, as in KNIG.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, not as in nighttime.
So he may be going from Jedi Knight to medieval Knight.
Wow. That's cool. I didn't know that. So we don't know if this is if Mark talking about having to go to work, if this is Star Wars or it could be this Nightfall TV show. That's a good point. It could be.
Yeah. Season 2 is where you're going to find Mark. It's on the History Channel. Nightfall.
Oh.
Nightfall. Yeah, I've never watched it.
Okay. Well, if it's about medieval knights and it's on the History Channel, I very well may enjoy this thing. Mm-hmm. So I should check it out.
It just says on History's Nightfall. So I assume History is the History Channel, right?
Right.
They just call it History now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you had History, and then you had like History Part, like History Channel 2. Then they just consolidate all under one thing.
Got it. So that's what Mark's going to be appearing in, and so maybe he's going to do that. I mean, it's hard to jump to conclusions with him. It's nice to see his career really seeing a sweet revival ever since it was announced that he was going to be in The Force Awakens. He's been appearing in all sort of really nice, high-profile roles and films.
Yeah.
Like when you think about the what's the name of that movie he's in? He's in all kind of movies now. So,
he was in the spy movie, the first one with Colin Firth.
Yeah,
great movie. Love that. Who was that? What was the name of that?
The Something Men. The
see, we're getting to that age. We're getting to that age,
dude. I'm already there.
You know.
Plus, all the recreational destruction I've done of many brain cells is it's not anything to...
Oh, yeah, Kingsman.
Hello.
Kingsman, that's it. Good Lord. Good Lord. All right. So, there you have it. Mark Hamill going back to work. We don't know what he's going back to work for. We can assume that it is episode 9. Could be this Nightfall thing. We don't know, but let's just have a little fun and pretend that it's episode 9.
Well, we know he's going to be in it, so he's going to have to shoot his part sooner or later.
Yeah, sooner or later. So, Star Wars Newsnet, are they nice to us or are they mean to us? I can't remember.
I think they're nice to us.
Okay, all right, then we'll drop their name. So Kyle Larson over at Star Wars Newsnet wrote a really nice review of the Han Solo novelization, and I was lucky enough, Jim, I think as we both were, I think being powerful and influential members of the Star Wars media, to receive our preview copies of the Solo novelization. I flipped through it, and I really enjoyed the fact that there's some illustrations in it. There's also something I haven't seen in a novelization book in a long time is some nice photos, production photos.
They've been in there. All the Star Wars film novelizations have had that treatment.
Yeah, no, they haven't.
Going back to The Force Awakens.
Oh, going back to Force Awakens?
Yeah,
but the prequels didn't have it. The prequels didn't have it.
Oh, the prequels didn't. Yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah, and Last Jedi, I think I've got that over there, too. Did it have the nice photos and the illustrations as well?
Yes.
It did? Okay. So they're really stepping up the game there on the production quality of the books. But Kyle breaks down really, really well some of the things that they bring out in the novel that they just didn't have time for, or that just somehow got left out of the film. And I pulled some that I thought were the most interesting to me.
Okay.
And Jim, we'll see if you feel that they are interesting as well.
And we should say spoiler alert.
Yes.
Because the book is just hitting.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
As the book, it's on sale now. It went on sale this week.
I'm going to go grab my copy here.
Yeah, I have mine. And like you said, there are some really nice photos in the center of the book.
So Kyle Larson, he wrote this great review over at Star Wars Newsnet, and he said after he put the book down, he viewed Han as a tragic figure. He says, now don't confuse his statement. I'm not saying he's a victim, but his death in The Force Awakens became a lot heavier to me. We learn more about Han's past. His father abandoned him. And whenever the prospect of family or belonging presents itself to Han in the book, there's much trepidation on his part because of the abandonment that haunts him. All Han's known as a child is how to survive. He doesn't even know his last name. So this idea of Han running away from family, running away from belonging, and then flash forward to the Han Solo who once again ran away from his responsibilities as a father, as we're led to believe, and then is struck down by his son. Struck down by the thing that he sort of grew up avoiding: family, belonging, responsibility to other people. It is very tragic. And I like what Kyle is saying. It's not the same as being a victim. We're not talking about him being a victim here. Han made his bed. There's no question about that. But there is a certain amount of tragedy involved.
Okay.
Yeah?
That's fine. I didn't need the book to get that, though.
Okay, no?
No.
Okay.
No.
You were feeling that. You were thinking about the Han of Force Awakens being impaled by the saber while you were watching Alden Ehrenreich's turn?
Maybe a couple of times.
Yeah.
You know, you were just sort of nudged to remember, oh, yeah, this is the same character that gets killed by his son.
Mm-hmm.
You know, while sacrificing, putting himself in harm's way for the greater good.
Yeah.
So he had come a long way. The thing about Han Solo is he's always been the easiest character for me to root for. I'm always rooting for Han Solo.
Mm-hmm.
So I never needed any sort of help to find any kind of compassion for the character. I think it's always been something I've understood about him. As a kid, he was abandoned or orphaned somehow.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't know anything about his mother.
Right.
But he did have knowledge of who his father was, and obviously it seemed like they didn't have a relationship. So it would be nice to read this novel and get a little more on that, because it was just sort of thrown out there at, in the middle part of the movie when he's talking to Lando about their fathers, and
yes.
He reveals that he knows, his father worked on a shipyard, but he didn't keep in touch with him. And I was surprised to hear Lando say the same thing, considering that this was a movie written by a father-son duo. That it would be odd. I just find it to be strange that a father and son would shine the spotlight on two guys who have miserable or non-existing relationships with their father.
True, but at the same time, Star Wars has its origins in the father-son relationship and how complicated it can be. George going back to his own relationship with his father.
Yeah. And abandonment
sure.
Also.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Kira, right? Pretty high up in Lady Proxima's network of the White Worms. That's the name of the child slave ring. At one point during the interrogation by Han by Lady Proxima, this is after they escape with the coaxium, or they have the coaxium. They steal the coaxium. You in the novel, it's brought out that Kira actually considers abandoning Han and running away with coaxium herself. She feels loyal to Han, but she seems to resent the fact that she feels it, because she doesn't want to be responsible for anyone but herself. So they're really sort of creating Han and Kira as these mirror images of each other, which at the end of the day is probably why their relationship wouldn't work. A lot of times people think that, one of the secrets to having a good relationship is, we're so much alike. That gets boring really fast. Opposites do attract and can hold that attraction very well. So you look at Leia and Han, you can understand opposites in a lot of ways. Sure, there's some similarities. Kira and Han, just too similar, and the novel brings that out. She was ready to just take the coaxium and run. Screw him.
And that just speaks volumes about the dire straits these two were in. Serving in some sort of indentured servitude to the Lady Proxima gang, having no freedom there.
Very Oliver Twist, as we've mentioned before.
Yes. And I think that per individual that finds themselves in this situation, the priority wouldn't be a romantic relationship with someone. It would always be escaping no matter what. And, if you have to step over people on the way out, then that's how you have to do it, because it's such a dire situation to be in, especially for a kid. So
that's a really good point. Look, and not to get too, carnal about this, but, when you're in servitude, you're in prison, so to speak, you might do things to satisfy your bodily urges, but it doesn't necessarily mean connection, romance, what have you.
Yes.
So Han may have been in love, But in her mind, just because of maybe the way he's wired, but in her mind, it's, you're a means to an end, buddy. I help you, you help me. But at the end of the day, if it's me or you, it's going to be me.
You have to look no farther for an example of this than the current season of Big Brother, in which Angela and Tyler may appear to be having a romantic relationship, but it's because they have to work together.
Big Brother.
The other house guests are all teaming up and conspiring against them. So maybe their relationship might seem real.
Let me tell you something about Big Brother. There are two. No, let me tell you something about Big Brother. There are two people on this planet that still watch that show, and I happen to know both of them. All right, this is what happens to me. All right, there's one person in our audience that is going to know what you're talking about here. Good Lord.
I don't know about this. As a matter of fact, I might find myself in the diary room right now because I have a few things I want to say, and it's about the current head of household, Jason Swain.
Oh no. Something else we learn about Kira in the book that I think maybe get a glimpse of, or perhaps we can maybe have made assumed, is that after Han and Kira are split up there when they were making their way off planet. Han is able to escape. Kira is picked up. She is returned to Lady Proxima, who considers her a liability after the escape attempt, and then she is sold to a slaver. No specifics about what the slaver did to her, but all the dark possibilities are not dismissed in the book. From the slaver, she is sold to Dryden Voss. Dryden brutalizes Kira before making her his second in command. But Kira doesn't take any of it. She kills multiple guards, and her ambition to escape strikes Dryden as someone who could be useful. The descriptions of how he torments her, both physically and mentally, are pretty unrestrained. So beware, it's not light stuff. So a very, very abusive situation. I'm reminded, Jim, of the Bond movie Skyfall, when Bond is trying to track Javier Bardem's character, and he comes across what he believes is the girlfriend, and he notices that there are bodyguards around her, and he said, no, they're not protecting you, they're watching you. There's a difference. So even though she was like the bad guy's girlfriend, perhaps they were making darn sure she didn't escape. So it wasn't like they were guarding her so much as they were, protecting her as they were guarding her, watching her, making sure she doesn't leave. That is exactly what I felt about Dryden and Kira, is that, he was keeping her on a short leash. There was sort of a weirdness. You got a sense that maybe there might be something going on between the two of them, but it was sort of dark and sort of icky. So I got that from their performances, for sure.
Yeah. I did too. Felt like there was something underneath the surface. Well, obviously, he is kind of hands-on with her when they're sitting on the sofa meeting with Beckett and Han.
He's got a hand on the knee there?
Yeah, he's kind of all over her. So it's more than just the performance, but there is a physical thing going on that we see. So that adds to it all, because you can tell that Han is her true love, right? I mean, I got to admit, I really did buy into the relationship between Han and Kira. But again, she's a tough book to read because she has this history now with organized crime that seems a little like it's not, I wouldn't say she's being held there like captive or anything, but she's in a place where she can't just leave. She can't. It's like being in organized crime. You can't just walk away from it one day.
No. There's only one way, and it's usually 6 of your best friends carrying you out by the handles.
Yeah. And in no point are you going to be sitting there eating Italian sausages with Paul Sorvino as he gives you a handful of cash and says, "Now I have to turn my back on you." That just doesn't happen.
All right. Well, since you said you're buying into the relationship or the romance here,
I am.
Try this on for size. Yeah, again, this is I'm quoting parts of this piece by Kyle Larson, his review over at Star Wars Newsnet about the Han Solo novelization. He talks about that Han also has a hold on Kira, same as Dryden, but it's much different. She feels sympathy for him and his idealism about a life of freedom in the galaxy. Kira never got to taste freedom the way Han did, and she regards the notion as an illusion. We all answer to someone. It's almost as if Kira feels the need to protect Han from his own naivete. Make no mistake, when Kira takes control of Crimson Dawn, this is for her and the victory of the terrible circumstances that brought her into the organization. But I can't help but think she's leaving Han as a way to shield him from finding out who she really is. So that's I think a very compelling idea, is that it is in a sense protecting him, but at the same time it's also protecting her own true identity.
I wouldn't necessarily call Han Solo naive, because what we're dealing with here, the situation is an entire galaxy is being oppressed, and Han Solo is a guy who was oppressed and then joined up with the thing that's oppressing the galaxy. It was glossed over in the movie, but Han served with the Imperials. And so he was able to see this oppression firsthand. And he was still able to go through their system and maintain his free spirit, his will, his individuality. So I think Han operates on a level of not naivete, but just arrogance, where he thinks that he can still do his thing. Doesn't matter if there's an evil empire.
Oh, yeah, right. There's oppression all over the galaxy, but he's not going to participate in it.
Right.
He's not going to participate in their oppression.
He already has more freedom than Kira will ever know. So it's because he's been able to maintain his individual freedom.
Yeah, some of it's mental, right? Your mental freedom.
Your focus determines your reality. Qui-Gon Jinn. And so he was able to roll through that imperial. He was serving in the army, and so he was able to see all of the horrors of war and the oppressive nature of the empire, and he was still able to walk out of there with his crooked grin intact and his attitude and his free spirit. And that, to me, makes Han someone who's actually achieved what he needs to achieve, whereas Kira will never find that. So she may look at Han as being naive, but in reality, he's already advanced to another level that she'll never be able to obtain.
You know, when you mentioned about he's able to escape with his crooked grin, that reminded me of something. You know, just like I was watching Episode 2 like a hawk for Anakin to lose his arm, I was also looking in the Solo movie for a moment when he got the chin scar.
Oh, a la the Indiana Jones
Last Crusade, yeah.
River Phoenix.
Yep.
And the whip.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they would have. Now, I know that, you know, in the current day of Star Wars movies, they're not afraid of repeating a good idea, you know, or
right.
or doing something more, because obviously you'll look at The Force Awakens and there's so many story beats that are just lifted directly from A New Hope. But, I mean, to do something where he gets the scar, I think that, you know, like Spielberg did that already. That's sort of been there, done that.
I don't know. I kind of like the idea. I kind of like the idea. All right, so let's see. What else do we got? So Val and Beckett. Not Beckett. Beckett. Yeah, Val and Beckett. These names just don't roll off my tongue like, you know, some of the other films. So I have to stop myself and think. I need to see the movie a few more times when it hits home video here in the next couple weeks.
Next week, right?
Next week. Well, it hits 2 weeks for iTunes, I believe, right? And then, or is it 1 week for iTunes and then 2 weeks for the Blu-ray?
Usually, digital next week on the 14th.
Okay, good.
So yeah, a week from today.
I'm pre-ordered on the digital. I definitely. I'm not pre-ordered yet on the physical media, but I'm definitely pre-ordered on on the digital. So anyway, Beckett, he's grieving Val. And Kyle mentions in this piece that he was kind of let down by the fact that Beckett doesn't seem to really grieve Val much in the film. But in the book, Val's running through his head throughout the rest of the story. She's just so he's constantly reflecting and having his little flashbacks of things that they worked on together, and this heist that they were on with, this was it for them. This was going to be their big final job, and then they were off to whatever the Star Wars equivalent of Bermuda is. But of course that wasn't to be, and Val was killed, and it completely changes Beckett in the novel and his motivations throughout the rest of the piece. And I kind of agree with that. I mean, they do sort of gloss over it a bit, but it's only a 2-hour movie. What are you going to do? You get a lot of ground to cover in that film. Chewbacca. Now, this is something, Jim. Did you think when you saw Solo that when you saw the bones and the scraps, did you think that Chewie or that the Wookiees were down there eating people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, well, according to the novel, they're not eating people.
They were droid parts, right?
No, the bones you're seeing are from scraps of raw meat that the Imperial officers fed to Chewie. But they got bored, and they wanted to see Chewie murder and feast upon a prisoner. So Han was the first one. Han was the one that they thought, oh, well, let's see what this thing does to this guy. So when Han met Chewie was on a hunger strike.
He was on a hunger strike?
That's what they say.
So they were throwing meat in there, and he was just leaving it?
Yeah, because they wanted to see him murder and feast upon a prisoner, and he was refusing to do that.
Okay.
So you got Chewie in there. They were throwing raw meat at him, and he was eating the raw meat. But then when they threw people at him, he refused. He was on a hunger strike.
So Han was not the first.
Yeah, Han must not have been the
okay.
first then. Yeah.
Clearly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
he looked like he just wanted to kill him.
Right. Because he's very, he's hungry. He's pissed off and hungry. But I didn't think, well, I shouldn't say I didn't think. I didn't know. It crossed my mind whether or not they were trying to show us Wookiees eating people a la the Ewoks. I didn't want to believe that, but at any rate. Boy, they clear up the life debt thing.
Oh, okay. All right.
They clear up the life debt thing, and I got to tell you, it's a bit of a letdown. You want to hear the reason why Chewie stays with Han?
Yes.
They can't all be hits, Roger. All right, here it is.
Let's hear this one.
Chewie stays with Han at the end of the story because he believes he can make the young man a better person.
Oh, so he's taking a mentor role here.
Yeah, and that the current state of the galaxy is not going to allow him to free his people anyway. I mean, Chewie does want to return back to Kashyyyk, but he feels he can do some good in the universe. Until that time, he feels he can do some good in the universe, and the day will eventually come, so he might as well make the best of it while he waits for his big moment. So he wants to make Han a better person, and he's biding his time till he can ride into Kashyyyk and free all the slaves.
No life debt.
No life debt at all.
So that bothers me because the life debt is far more clever and it adds to the mythology much more than I just want him to be a good boy, so I'm going to stick around. That's lazy.
It's terribly lazy.
That's flippin' lazy.
It's terribly lazy until something better comes along, is really what it is. Meanwhile, I can make his life better or, make him a better person. So, yeah, no life debt. This is according to the author, Mur Lafferty.
It's not even a matter of survival or anything. It's just like,
no.
Yeah, this guy seems okay. I'm just going to stick with him. That is terribly uncreative. And you're right. It's a cop-out. Because the life debt, that was just something that really added to the mythology, where it's something bigger than Chewie that makes him stay with Han. And it's his respect of a Wookiee culture that has things like life debt in place.
Right. Now, Jim, did we, I know we talked about the life debt. What was the origin of that? Was that in
the Brian Daley?
It was the Brian Daley. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I believe in one of those novels, that was the first time we had heard mention of the life debt.
And then in episode 1,
you, sir, have the life play with this and hissin'?
The life play. That's life play.
Well,
that means you just play. And when you get tired, you go home.
No, it's the life debt.
With debt, you're there. You're there all the time. Yeah.
Well, he translates it as life debt. He says he owes us what you call a life debt or something like that in episode 1. And you still have the life play, whatever. So when that happened, I thought, okay, the notion of a life debt is now in canon, right? The idea of it, which then opens the door to the Han and Chewie thing when they were talking about Jar Jar and Qui-Gon. So I thought that was in a way canonizing the whole concept of a life debt, which then further cemented the idea that that's what Han and Chewie had. Plus, I think a lot of us in those early days leading up to Phantom Menace were thinking that this Jar Jar character was going to be the Chewbacca of the film. He was the alien sidekick / co-pilot based on what we saw in those previews. So, but yeah, this novel, which I think, up to this point, I was kind of in on everything Kyle was saying. I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds cool. Can't wait to read it. And then I got to that part, and I'm like, oh, man. What a letdown. She went to the Rian Johnson school of plot continuity here. I mean, give us a good life play. Life debt.
But you're right about that. If you're going to wipe out established mythology, try to come up with something good or better than that.
Right.
But this was, it's like not even trying. They're not even trying.
Yeah.
So, I'm just going to stick around because he needs to be, I'm going to help him be a good boy.
Yeah.
Oh, and it just doesn't make any sense because Han was always the alpha in that relationship.
Right. You can't change that.
Yeah, you can't. And it doesn't feel right if you're going to.
He was the alpha, but you also got a sense that they, like the Lone Ranger and Tonto, they needed each other.
Yes.
And that there were times when, where Tonto clearly knew more than the Lone Ranger, and there were times when, Tonto needed the Lone Ranger. I just looked at it as one of those quintessential partnerships where, it's like you and me, man. There are times when I got to lean on you and times when you got to lean on me. It's like any good friendship or partnership. It's...
You also have a life play with this and hissin'. I'm looking at the script right now.
Is that what the line is? Life play?
It says life play with this'n hissin'. Binks. You sir haven't, and this is George Lucas at the typewriter. I mean, this is Lucas.
No, this isn't with the number 2 pencil.
Oh yeah,
and
right.
The yellow legal pad.
Right. Let's see. With this and hissin'. Yeah, I like that. Hissin' leave dis yos out. Like, let's just read it like Harrison Ford, okay?
Yeah.
You sir having life play with this and hissin'. Hissin' live dis yos outlander. Be gone with him. Count Misa out of this. Better dead here. Better than in the core. Ye gods. What did Misa say? Chewie. Misa have the life and play with this and this.
I want to hear Harrison Ford. I want to hear him read the prequels. I would love to have him.
Binks broken and no comebacky law.
Oh, if there's a God in heaven, we're going to get an audiobook, some Star Wars audiobook read by Harrison Ford. Oh, my gosh.
Hissin to be punished.
Oh, that's right. Punished. Hissin to be punished.
George, you can write this but you can't say it.
Oh, man. I got one more for you about Chewie. You ready for this one?
Yeah.
So there's a scene aboard the Falcon where Lando tries to help Chewie get the rest of the grime out from his undercoat. You've done this with your dog, right? Your
dog don't even get me started.
The undercoat, you know, that's where. And Chewie ends up, hey, Songbird, I'm on the air here. Okay, my daughter comes down. She's like, la, 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 you know, like nothing's going on.
General Grievous.
Yeah, right.
I want to hear that. Oh, by the way, we do have the Parker General Grievous cough comparison montage ready to go at any given time.
Good. I got it. All right. So here, so Lando is helping to get the grime out from Chewie's undercoat, and so Chewie ends up using all of Lando's very expensive shampoo and clogging up the shower drain in the Millennium Falcon. All right, men, we've all been there, right?
Yeah. Are you going? Is this a sponsor thing? We're gonna, man. We've all been there. In your, Calrissian conditioner.
Yeah. Right. Hold on one second. What? Excuse me. What? Yeah, in the bag. It's all in the bag. Sorry about that. We're recording a little earlier than normal, and I got the kids home and had to help Bailey with it. Do you love when your kids ask you where their own stuff is? This kills me.
Oh.
Do you know where my?
I get a lot of, what is this doing here? And I'll be like, I don't even know what that is. And they wake me up to ask me.
Oh, that's the best. Do you know where am I? No, I don't know where it is. What? Oh, yeah. Oh, let's see. When I was using your origami paper, that's what she's looking for. Anyway, okay. So Lando, apparently, he's a man of refined taste. He has very expensive shampoo. This isn't stuff that you buy at the drugstore. You have to go to, the salon to get the shampoo. Mm-hmm. And those salons, you got to make several jumps to hyperspace to get to the right one that Lando goes to. Anyway, so Chewie uses it all and then clogs up the shower. Now, we do know, what did make it in the film is that very awkward scene, we know which one I'm talking about, the shower scene.
Right. Yes.
It was a little awkward, wasn't it?
Yes and no. Because... Well, it was just very early on, kind of establishing a family bond between Han and Chewie.
A closeness, right.
It's just like, wherever you go, I'm going to go kind of thing, I mean.
I dig it. Yeah.
I felt like that was a good place in the movie to have something like that happen because they had only really just met and worked together to escape. And the main thing that really helped them escape was just trusting each other in total dire situations.
Yeah, right.
And so at that point, then you can see that there's something more than just I need you, you need me. Let's help each other escape. There actually is a bond going on between these two guys. And then judging, of course, what we already know of the characters, that becomes so much more amplified.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I guess I could do without the whole backstory of the shampoo and clogging up the drain. It's just a little down to earth, You talk about minutia. Anyway, okay, now we really get where the rubber hits the road, right? This is the stuff in the book that we were hoping we would see expanded on, right? Darth Maul, Crimson Dawn, all of that stuff, Dryden Voss. So apparently, Dryden wasn't just an underling of Darth Maul and Crimson Dawn. He was Maul's student. But They're very clear. This is not a suggestion that Dryden Voss was Force sensitive. No, Maul trained Voss in the fighting arts of Taras Kasi.
Yes.
Right? That
Yes.
great video game for the PlayStation.
Right.
The
Also
original
teased that in the film itself by Kira, who said that she was skilled in some of the Taras Kasi arts.
Yes. So this is something that non-Force users can employ to defend against Jedi or Sith. So this is a fighting style that is specifically created to aid in your defense against Force users. And Dryden passed that on to Kira, as it's stated in the film. But something that's interesting is that in the novel, because the training of Taras Kasi heightens the non-Force user's senses, Kira is able to sense the creature in the Maelstrom on the Kessel Run before anyone else on the Falcon.
Oh, so she actually is like tapping into the Force? Is that what we're led to believe?
They're not saying that she is Force sensitive. In fact, the author clearly states that she's not Force sensitive. Mm-hmm. But they're kind of she's wanting to have her cake and eat it too a little bit here. Because on the one hand, she's very overt, explicitly saying she's not Force sensitive. On the other hand, she's saying that Taras Kasi arts can heighten senses of a non-Force user.
No.
So
no,
this is like giving superpowers.
That means you're tapping into the Force. That's all it means is you're tapping into the Force.
So you'd have to be Force sensitive.
So if you are capable to somehow tap into the Force because you're using Taras Kasi, then there must be a bunch of other disciplines that you can use. Jedi disciplines, Force disciplines, whatever you want to call them, that would help you tap into it even more. Mm-hmm. There would have to be. That's too specific. I don't like that either.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's trying to have it both ways.
No. Yeah. So no, it's almost like if you can use karate, then you could read minds. You know, no.
Right.
Don't give me that. Don't give me that.
Yes. All right. The last one here, which is a doozy. This one's good. It is confirmed in the novel that Kira has no idea who Darth Maul is.
Right.
And her contact with him on the yacht is the first time that she's ever seen him.
That's right. Actually, second time. The first time, I think she's seen him with the hood down, though, where he actually exposes how he looks. We talked about this a little bit last week with Paul, your replacement Paul.
Right.
I mean, your fill-in Paul and Lisa. And I actually did read part of the excerpt.
Oh, okay. So this was released, this part of the novel.
Yeah, well, no, I had the novel last week.
Oh, I see. Okay.
When we recorded the show. And it does reveal that she had seen him once before. She wasn't even sure of his identity and didn't understand that he was capable of using the Force until he summoned the lightsaber over to him. So a lot of people looked at that scene in the movie and thought, well, that's kind of some odd showboating that Darth Maul's doing right there. But essentially, there is a method to the madness. He was trying to display to her that he has powers that are probably she's incapable of comprehending. And so that would be more or less of a intimidation tactic or just a way of saying, hey, maybe I can teach you how to unleash this power within you if it exists.
You have a power
seems like it may.
I could never have.
Right. But from what I'm hearing, though, if she's able to tap into the Force and be able to sense something outside of the starship, then that would mean that she definitely is Force capable. So
I totally agree. I think it's a bit of a cop-out. This sounds, and thank you, Kyle, for your great review. I don't know Kyle, but I really did like the thoroughness of the review, and it certainly inspired me. I definitely want to read the book. There was enough in here that I go, yeah, I want to read that. And it also made me really excited to be able to watch this movie like 50 more times when it comes out on digital.
Are you going to read the book?
I'm going to wait for the audiobook.
Oh, I will make sure you get it as soon as we're done with the show.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, our friends over at are they from Penguin? I think they are.
Yeah, they're from Penguin.
Del Rey, Penguin, Random House, whatever they call it. It's like every book company that ever existed under one roof now. You know?
Exactly. Disney Books, Lucas Books.
From the people that brought you the Bible.
Total consolidation. But anyway, I really enjoyed the review over there at Star Wars. You can check the whole thing out at Star Wars News Net. I definitely recommend it. Okay. Moving on, Rian Johnson confirmed his Star Wars trilogy is still in the works by way of Twitter. Matt Allen wrote, "Are you still working on your?" Well, he wrote "in your Star Wars trilogy," assuming he meant on. Spell check doesn't catch that because they're both words. On, in, whatever. Rian Johnson answered him very quickly and very succinctly with the word "yup."
Yep.
Period. Yup, with a fist bump. So this is as of August 29th. There's been a lot of speculation about whether or not Johnson's trilogy would be put on ice, into carbon freeze, so to speak. But that does not seem to be the case, despite all of the controversy that sprung up around The Last Jedi and Rian Johnson. He is still, at least in his mind, working on this trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So, be that as it may, we all wait with bated breath as to what's going on with that. And lastly, I do want to mention that this was some exciting news as we get close to Galaxy's Edge opening up at the Disney parks. A couple of casualties. Apparently, they got to close some things down. So in Disney Hollywood Studios in Florida, the Tatooine Traders, which I love, it's being remodeled, so it's closed down now.
Okay. Well, it will be back.
It will be back, yeah. But, and
it'll probably be one of many Star Wars gift shops.
Yeah, I hope so.
That Galaxy's Edge opens up. You'd have to imagine there's going to be more than one gift shop in that place.
Well, I imagine so. And something I don't remember. Do you remember Amazing Pictures? It seems to be Amazing Pictures and the Droid Factory. I remember the Droid Factory. But those are closing down until they reopen. And they're still set for, what is that, 2019? Fall of 2019. Late fall of 2019. But check this out. This is very exciting. John Williams confirmed to write and score music with Michael Giacchino for Disneyland and Walt Disney World's Galaxy's Edge theme park expansions.
Well, that's fantastic news. We thought that John Williams, his last entry as far as content providing the Star Wars universe, I thought it would be Episode 9 for sure. And it probably still will be. I mean, isn't Galaxy's Edge opening prior to Episode 9? Yeah.
Yep. In fact, it could be weeks before. So a late fall 2019 for Galaxy's Edge, and we know a December release for Episode 9. So, late fall could be November, leading into Episode 9. Now, Williams and Giacchino, they worked together on the Star Tours reboot. Star Tours The Adventure Continues. Giacchino also did the music for Rogue One, of course. So, interesting that we're seeing a little bit more of this partnership. I mean, I think after the Rogue One score, personally, it seems like he's the heir apparent to John Williams, though the composer, whose name is escaping me, that did the Solo soundtrack.
That would be not Kevin Kiner. It is a guy by the name of John Powell.
John Powell.
John Powell. I have the soundtrack right in front of me, too.
Yeah, so. John Powell. John Powell wasn't chosen for this, even though Williams did add the Han Solo theme song to Powell's score for the Solo film. So, but it does seem like Giacchino, for keeping score, seems to be the guy that could perhaps replace John Williams as the the composer of record for the Star Wars franchise.
Okay. That's great, because I love what Giacchino did with Rogue One, and if this is a way of branching him off into a bigger role as Star Wars soundtracks continue to be made for upcoming Star Wars films. No knock on other guys who have done it, like John Powell or Kevin Kiner with Star Wars animation, but I think Giacchino really found the secret sauce when he did the soundtrack for Rogue One. And even though he was really rushed through it, he definitely clicked off all the right boxes.
Like 9 weeks or something, like 7 or 9 weeks. I mean, it was not much time at all.
I think it was 4 weeks. I mean, It was a really short period. Yeah. And it sounds like he may actually be working with John Williams, like together, And so what better way than to prepare a guy who could potentially have a future as the composer for Star Wars once John steps down, which I think he's going to following Episode 9. I believe that John may have made some comments about that in the past. I believe we've played some comments of his here on the show. I think he appeared on... Didn't he appear on NPR at one point saying that after Episode 9 he was going to be done? But I think that...
He's real sweet on Daisy Ridley.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. He sure is. I mean...
He doesn't want anyone writing her music.
Yeah, welcome to the club, John. But, it's great news to think of that. This could serve, two purposes. You have these... great composers, the old guard and the new guard coming together to work on a project, and then potentially get the next generation of Star Wars composers up and running by working side by side with them. If that is indeed the case, if Williams is indeed working directly with Michael Giacchino, which this report sounds like that's happening.
Yeah,
I think that's great news. But the greatest news concerning Star Wars Galaxy Edge is plain and simple. Here it is in the Orange County Register. Disneyland will sell alcohol for the first time when Star Wars Lands opens up in 2019. Yes,
yes, that's amazing. Just think about how excited Wendy's going to be.
I know we'll be able to actually keep her in the park for more than 90 minutes.
Because I remember when we were you going there with all our families. I remember you saying, but here's the thing, Wendy's pretty patient, but she gets to those parks and they're not serving any alcohol.
Then it's game over.
Yeah. And it is a weird thing. I mean, I understand it to a degree. But no, this is great because they're going to have, if you ever wanted to actually sit there and sip on some adult beverages in a cantina, we're going to get our shot finally.
Yes.
With Galaxy's Edge. The cantina is going to be incredible.
Yeah, this is the big news. Disneyland will sell liquor publicly for the first time in its 63-year history, officials announced on Thursday, August 30th. Though it will only be available in outer space, also known as Black Spire Outpost on the planet Batuu in Star Wars Galaxy Edge when it opens next year.
So cool.
So cool. And it's the new cantina has a name, Oga's Cantina, not Olga, no L, O-G-A. Or is it Oga? Uga's Cantina? This is what it says in the press release. Uga's Cantina is the kind of establishment that attracts some of the most interesting and disreputable characters in the galaxy.
Well, who the hell is Oga?
Oga is it's Oga's Cantina. You just go in there. It's like
well, I know you got Wooer's Cantina. You had B. Arthur,
right?
And now you got Oga. But I'm just wondering who's Oga.
Oga is someone who is going to be serving us adult beverages by the bucket load when we go there. I did see the names of the beverages too. I did not save. Oh, I do want to point out something real quick though. This is what everyone says when people get upset about things happening at Walt Disney World. Whenever anyone thinks that it's a bad idea, they always say, Walt Disney is rolling over in his grave. And so with the announcement that Disneyland is going to be serving alcohol for the first time in its 63-year history, then a lot of people took to Twitter with that line. Alcohol. There's some really funny...
ironically, it's Star Wars that finally pushed him over the edge.
Right,
of all things. You couldn't even, make licensed, barware of Star Wars for a while, for the longest time.
Oh, that's interesting.
And still, like if you go to Target and you see what are clearly shot glasses that are Star Wars, they don't call them shot glasses. I forget what they call them, like
toothpick holders. I've seen,
or 1 ounce glasses or whatever.
The line, though, about Walt Disney, I saw it like 4 or 5 times the day that this was announced.
So is Disney like some Puritan? He didn't believe in any of this?
Well, he didn't want a situation where, he wanted Disney to be family-friendly and everything.
Instead of a bunch of drunks.
Here's actually a quote from Walt Disney. He said this to the Saturday Evening Post in 1956. No liquor, no beer, nothing, because that brings in a rowdy element. That brings people we don't want, and I feel they don't need it. I feel when I go down to the park, I don't need a drink. I work around that place all day, and I don't have one. Okay? So he's,
I work there all day. I don't need a drink. You come in here for a couple hours, you need a drink? What's going on?
God, weren't the 50s just fabulous? It's like somebody was considered out of the ordinary because they weren't drinking at work.
Right. Well, I know. God. Those were the days. I mean, but I can guarantee you that guy had a drink in his hand the second he, turned the doorknob in his house.
Oh, yeah. He probably had that cocktail wagon.
Right, that they all had right in the doorway.
You don't see that anymore. A wagon. You just pull it over by your favorite chair then, and you got everything you need. But Disneyland, it's, I know a lot of adults go there, but I think a lot of people don't think that liquor and a kids park like that mix well together. Now, of course, they have been serving alcohol in places like Disney's California Adventure, which is right next door to Disneyland. They've been serving alcohol at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and who hasn't drunk their way around the world at Epcot? I know I sure did. And gosh, I was even a kid when I first did that, so maybe they're right. But.
Yeah, Walt said, just get pissed before you get here.
On the parking lot, maybe.
Right. Well, no, that's all really good news. I mean, and little detail here, if you were a fan of the original Star Tours, Paul Rubin's character Rex, the droid pilot, he's going to be the DJ in the Oga Cantina.
Mm-hmm. So good. They can reuse that old thing that's been in mothballs since the revamped Star Tours opened in 2012. I don't know.
Do you think since it's Pee-wee, or since it's Paul Rubin, do you think they'll play the na-na-na-na-na-na-na?
Maybe.
What's the name of that song?
Maybe, a little. That's a little Easter egg right there.
Yeah, that would be great.
But so drinks coming to Disneyland, so you can have several of them. Go on the Matterhorn and then hurl in your stormtrooper bucket. That's not what they want. That is not what they want.
But great news. You got Giacchino, you got John Williams, and you got alcohol coming to Galaxy's Edge. What could you want?
Really, it's a perfect storm.
It really is. All right, well, before we wrap up here, we got Billy D coming up in just a moment. But before we get to that, my son made a little appearance and did his little audition for General Grievous, complete with his... what do you call this thing again? The
snorkel.
Snorkel, yeah, the snorkel.
It's very impressive. So I thought we'd take it into the sound lab and throw together a little montage and compare it to the actual General Grievous coughing sound, so you could just hear how accurate young Parker actually is.
All right.
Oh, geez, I think he coughed up something there.
I need a lozenge after listening to that.
I know. Yeah, I know. My throat's all itchy after hearing it.
Well, it's almost like Grievous the younger years.
It's like before and after.
Yeah.
Play it one more time, because that last cough is just... Oh, jeez.
Oh, man, that's great. That's great. All right, one more for you.
This is Billy D. Williams, Lando Calrissian. It's time for the quote of the week.
Hello, what have we here?
It's just me, Billy D.
Hey, don't mess this up, man. Be smooth.
Lando's right.
Billy D.
Sorry, baby, it's just business.
Why you slimy, double-crossing, no-good swindler?
Works every time. And Lando Calrissian is forever.
All right, it's been a long time since we heard from Billy D, but with the news that he is going to be back in Star Wars, back in action, we thought that maybe the possibility would be that we'd be hearing from him. And just a couple of days ago, he took to Twitter. Now, Jim, it wasn't that long ago that he was bragging up his getting back in shape with his trainer, Gunner. He announced that he was doing that, and he was feeling strong and healthy.
Yeah.
And released his photo. He's looking fantastic. Still holding on to the cane.
Well, yeah. I mean, does that really hurt his character either? I mean, if we end up seeing a Lando Calrissian with a cane, does that bother you at all? No.
The Emperor had a cane.
Yoda had a cane.
Yoda had a good point. Good point.
Right. So I would not be bothered at all, because somebody was saying, well, how could he be in this movie? He can barely walk. He uses a cane. We'll put him on screen with a cane. A cane and a cape? What? I mean, it's just as dignified as it gets.
Come on. Of course. Well, anyway, so what we got here is on Twitter a video with some audio. We got to crank it way up here. But this is Billy D. He's actually in the gym. And one great way to get into shape is to box and to spar. And here he is. He's got his trainer, Gunner, in the gym with him. And Billy D is decked out in these fabulous white boxing gloves. And he's wearing a bowling shirt with a big patch that says BDW on it.
Hell yeah.
Looking great. Complete with shades, by the way. I don't know who else boxes wearing shades.
Yep.
Billy D, that's who. And so let's tune in here. Let's bring up the volume. We can hear Billy D with... Let's turn it up. Throwing punches.
Yeah, two more.
Hit me in the jaw.
Hit me in the jaw, he says.
Now, jab, hook.
So maybe Lando's going to see some fisticuffs in this movie. Punching someone out. Well, Michael Jackson playing in the background.
Yeah, I dig that.
Yeah, that's some solid punching. Oh. Now, Billy D looks like he's maybe boxed before. Oh, he's tired. This is taking a lot out of him.
One more, Billy. Come on.
Ooh, that's it. Okay, well, at least we got a quota. That's why I said this is the Billy D grunt of the week.
Well, it did say he's like, hit me in the jaw.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I keep expecting Billy Mack to jump in with some sort of commentary right now. This is kind of...
Oh, I know.
I should have called him. But
he's screaming.
Wouldn't it be funny if we played the audio and Billy was like, he's just like hitting it slowly, like we heard, and then all of a sudden it just picks up. He's like, really, he
just like hulks out,
Yeah,
Hogan.
yeah.
shaking the face, the finger.
Yeah, right.
Oh, it'd be fantastic. But hey,
turn up the
what?
Michael Jackson, I wonder if Billy asked, all right, listen, while I'm training, I need to hear Michael Jackson. It's his pick, obvious. He's not going to go in there and train because Billy's, he's got that musical ear. He's probably always thinking about music.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was his call. I said, all right, I'm training, but we're listening to Michael. It's like, okay, Billy D, okay.
Well, Billy D, by the way, he deserves a lot more than 132,000 Twitter followers. So if you're not following at RealBDW, by the way, it's always positive stuff. So if you're one of those that has been turned off of Twitter, and I don't blame you, but Billy D's always posting positive stuff.
Yeah, and if you want to be one of those Star Wars fans who's going to take a pot shot at him, I'm sure you won't last very long either, so don't even try.
Yeah.
Or else he might come looking for you, and he's been training, baby. And do you think that at some point they're going to want to try to turn him into a southpaw, and they're going to tie his right arm down and, have him chasing a chicken around the courtyard? See if you're going to be like Grease Lightning, kid. You're going to... You're going to eat lightning and crap thunder. Well, I don't know. I really can... Come on, kid.
Hit me in the jaw.